All right. Scott Laigo, it's good to see you, buddy.
You
Um,
too.
it's student athletes advocates, man. Check him out. Scott's always helping parents and student athletes through the eligibility, recruiting, and financial aid process. You're the president of Student Athletes Advocates, and who else better than to be here today? It's recruiting day. Even though it feels a little bit not the same. I mean, December 16th, I got to be honest with you, man. December 16th kind of took the starch out of February 3rd a little bit, just because, a lot of players already kind of seem to know where they're going. And obviously it's a very confusing time. We're going to kind of get into some of the decisions made today and something that we really haven't dealt with, before with the whole transfer portal. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, let's just kind of recap the 2020 season of college football. Obviously, Alabama wins the national title. It's a foregone conclusion, just kind of the same way it was, the year before with LSU, just these powerhouse teams. And it's funny that, these teams are kind of staring at each other, mirroring each other when it comes to the offensive prowess. When we saw just a remarkable first half with Devontae Smith absolutely dominating. I mean, can you ever recall a player playing a half of football and being the MVP of the game?
No, I've not seen that ever, and it was pretty remarkable. I mean, we all knew that Wade, their quarterback from Ohio State, was supposed to be maybe a first rounder NFL guy. Unfortunately, his NFL career got decreased by every pass Devontae caught, so that was not a. They didn't really have a great plan for him. He was phenomenal, and the thing that's amazing really about the kid is if you literally just kind of look at how skinny and small in stature he really
Yeah.
is, real big guy, but boy, he is special what he does, man. He is really, really different. And I didn't know, I was kind of mixed emotions about Waddle even playing out there with a really gimpy foot, because I think they have enough weapons at Alabama to be still successful. But you put those two on the same field, but they're both going 100 miles an hour. I mean, you got to pick your poison and what you got to do. But the performance by Smith himself really was the culmination of showing to everybody in the country that he was the true best player in the country and winning the Heisman. He was phenomenal. Phenomenal.
It's at his size, and I'm pretty sure if I spent a little bit more time, I could think of other people, but just because of his slender build, right? I'm trying to say that nicely, right? Instead of saying just a skinny dude, a slender build guy. He reminds me a little bit of a Marvin Harrison, and not to put any expectation. We're talking about a Hall of Fame wide receiver, so I'm not trying to put expectations like that on him. I'm just talking about the build, just such a slender guy with really good hands. So that was something that really kind of, just stuck out for me. And not only just seeing his performance in the national title game, but throughout the season. And for Jalen, I mean, I was deathly afraid for him. I mean, seeing him run around and limping around all over the place and still kind of going out there. And this is not, Toledo or something like that relies on these guys. I mean, they've got plenty of guys. Jalen did not need to come back for this game and take a chance with injury. One, what does it say about Jalen? And two, what does it say about the guys that decide to opt out of these games? And we saw a lot of these guys. We saw the two best running backs that North Carolina had. They didn't play in their game. We saw guys all over the place. So what are your thoughts on both those two things?
Well, number one, I think he even goes one step further, Will. This last week they had the All-Star, NFL college
The
All-Star
Senior
game.
Bowl. Yeah.
And every Alabama guy was there. I mean, the quarterback, the running back, the centers,
You're
the
right.
tackles. Yeah. And it's what they build at Alabama. Coach Saban teaches them this is the NFL way. This is if you want to get to that level and if you want to do these things, and then we're about team and making it happen. Dickerson's last play of the game where he just wanted to snap a ball to be in the national championship game, it means that much to him. And so I have a lot of respect for what their culture is and who they are about what they do. They're not going to opt out. That's not who they are. They want to get in and they want to compete. And, that's what makes the Alabama machine what it is. Now, you and I both have the same feelings that, that's kind of why maybe the numbers were down so much from the national championship game, because it's the same old group we see. You and I are going to like to watch it just because we like college football. But that's the point. But my point about Alabama, what your question is, I just think it's the culture that they have there. I think it's really impressive. If you're an NFL guy, I mean, you're like, these kids showed up and there's no reason for these kids to show up. No reason for them to do their stuff. They're going to be first rounders, second rounders, third round. We know who they are and we know where they're coming from. So I just think it's their culture that they provide there. And I think it's also a really good message to a lot of the kids in the country. Like, hey, play with your team and complete the year, do the right thing. And do what's the most important, is win a national championship and playing for the elite. And the fun thing about the wide receiver room at Alabama, I mean, everybody would say, hey, God, it'd be nice to be the offensive line coach or the running back coach, Najee Harris, and all the studs that they've had in the last couple of years. Henry, that's with the Titans and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind being the wide receiver coach at Alabama. I mean, come on now, you got dudes. And this year, which will come on, they've already got the 4 top guys in the country and maybe the 5th best wide receivers in the country. I mean, that's the richer getting richer from the whole deal. But we'll talk about that down the road. But again, going to what you're saying, just the culture that they have there, it's really impressive. And hats off to Coach Saban for creating that, because easily those kids could have opted out if they wanted to play in that Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not to, I don't know, it's not to minimize what they do and what they preach. But I guess at the same time, also, when you've got guys competing for a national title, you might feel a little bit more responsibility kind of showing up. And obviously for Jalen, he didn't need to play in that game. Obviously he was limping around and still, he was impactful. I believe he had like 3 receptions, stuff like that. But still, the fact that he was on the field, you had to respect him, especially when Devontae Smith was out of the game in the second half. Even though the game was already out of hand, he was still out there playing. He was still out there playing in the fourth quarter, which was absolutely amazing. But I guess my point is, when that you're not going to be in a game like that, right? When you're not going to be competing for a national title, when our bowl system at this point has been watered down. And that's really what's happened now with the creation of the playoff system. The rest of the bowls have been watered down. And we talked about this, a few months ago on, a previous show, but just to kind of reiterate, they have to figure out what they're going to do if they're going to do an entire bowl system, not just with 4 teams, but maybe 16, or even more than that, maybe less, but still you have to incorporate more people or be done with it. And obviously that's not going to happen at this point, because the playoff games, the bowl games mattered, right? The Peach Bowl mattered. The Rose Bowl mattered. The Fiesta Bowl mattered, right? The way we remember them, the Cotton Bowl, and thinking about, New Year's Day and seeing these images and knowing when you see the Rose parade, you're like, here we go. Everything's on the line, no matter if they were thought of as the number 1 team in the country or the number 10 team in the country, it all mattered. And it doesn't seem like it matters. And I don't blame these kids, and to each his own, whether they want to play or not, but I don't blame them for them opting out and saying, well, I played the entire season and now I'm in a game that doesn't matter. And I'm just like, I'm going to get ready for the next level. And we've seen it with whether it's a McCaffrey and he's a star now in the NFL or other players. So what do you think that they should do, or some of your thoughts going forward for 2021 and beyond? And obviously I think they missed a boat this past season of experimenting with things, but what are your thoughts? Playoff system, keep it the way it is, expanding, or go back to bowl games so more games matter?
Well, I think number one thing, they have to expand, period. And I think this was the year to do it. And I think the number one reason is, as we like to laugh with Dory about it, there are 5 power conferences. There's only 4 teams that make it. So somebody gets left out every year. And for us, for our sake, we live on the West Coast. So we're Pac-12 guys. We'd like to watch it. And we may watch the games after dark for all we know, but we are going to watch the games. But my point is, I think they have to move it to 8 at least. I'd like to see 16, see it really be a real true tournament, just like they do in the FCS, playoffs. And I think it's a really doable, easy thing to do. We can still use all the bowl games. It's a really simple formula. That's not the hard part, but more to the point of to get all the conferences in, make the kids feel for it. And what you're saying is, because if you're a Pac-12 kid and you're not going to go to the bowl game week 5, let's just argue, you're not going to play in the bowl game. it's a business decision. You're going to go down to Arizona, start working out, getting ready, getting bigger, faster, stronger for the NFL, because it's a business decision. You may only have 3 to 4 years shelf life in the NFL, and you can only make league minimum, so you're making $1 million in 4 years. So you have to make those business decisions. And unless they open it up and make it really, truly a playoff system and let kids play for the real reason what they want to play for, a national championship, I think they're going to end up I think they're going to continue to end up with the same numbers that they're having. And if they don't, it's going to be a bad thing. And for us out here, it would make us be more inclined to keep watching games, because we know that the Pac-12 means something. They're going to get a bid, and we know that one of the teams is going to make it. It's going to make it more fun. And then we can use this year, and again, it's an anomaly year, but we have the Pac-12 North champion, we have the Pac-12 South champion, and we have a Pac-12 champion. And the North never got to even play in the game because of the issues. And that's, it just, to me, it's they have to go to 8, and it gives the power. If you're outside the Power 5, it gives you an opportunity to get in there, and it keeps the independents, i.e. Notre Dame, has an opportunity to be in there. So we still let everybody be a part of the conclusive. And if the 8 happen to be all SEC, Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12 teams, that's the way it works. But if since Cincinnati makes it in, or if we could argue Boise makes it in and does what they did to Oklahoma a couple of years ago in the Fiesta Bowl, that would be a great playoff game, and it'd be fun. It's fun to watch, and 8 takes down 1. I mean, it'd be a shocker, but it is what it is. But let's be honest. I mean, 1 versus 4 this year, it was over about the first quarter, and so at that point, I say let some outside of Power 5 team play. Maybe ends up the same result, but at least let somebody get in the game and play.
It's funny for all of the complaints that people had about Notre Dame being in the game, right, and making the top 4, and people saying Texas A&M and this and that. And by the way, I wasn't impressed with Texas A&M on the grand scale. All right, not to minimize anything, they were a great team, but they weren't going to do any better than what Notre Dame did. And in fact, you could argue that Notre Dame played better than Ohio State. I mean, Notre Dame gave them a better game, and I know they kind of took their foot off the off the gas in the fourth quarter, but you can argue Notre Dame played better than Ohio State, and obviously Notre Dame beat Clemson the first game. So it's all kind of interesting. But I guess the point is that we want to see those matchups, and the FCS, and we're going to get into that conversation in a little bit. But the FCS, just sticking with the playoffs, they usually have 24 teams make the playoffs, and they scaled down for this spring season to 16. And like I said, we'll get into that more, a little bit later, but it just shows it can be done. And you give these guys, reward them, give them bye weeks, let them sit out that first week. Alabama don't need to play. We don't need to see them the first week play a number 16 or a number 24 team. Let them get a bye. Even if it's 24, let them get 2 byes. Let them go through it if that's what they want to do. If you think that's a reward, if you're doing 24 teams, reward 6 teams or 8 teams with a 1 week bye. Let everybody else kind of find a way, knock out some of the other teams and kind of move on. And then, your power teams, your top 8 teams, join in and play. I'm just saying, we love March Madness, whether you're a big college basketball fan or not. If you're a sports fan, you put it on. I'm always looking for the upset, and we have them, and it's always that they might not knock out a number 1 team, but they'll knock out, number 2, number 3 ranked team. We have them. And the reason you watch is to play, because things happen. Turnovers happen. Fumble happen. Key players get hurt. Elements, snow, rain. You get an Alabama team, all of a sudden they're playing, and it's somewhere that's cold, and all of a sudden they're dealing with elements that I used to deal. That's why you play. And more importantly, we want to see it for recruiting processes. And now we're going to kind of spin it forward to where we are today, right? More visibility, right? Coastal Carolina. If you're not a dedicated, hardcore college football fan, you don't know who Coastal Carolina is until this year. And why is that? They played well. They got visibility. They were on TV. And that's why you want to expand the playoff system. Anyway, your thoughts there.
No, absolutely, 1,000%. I can't. Again, I go back to the television ratings this year, and it's the worst I've ever had. And I think it's just the bottom line. It's boredom. People are tired of seeing the exact same programs, and then it gets boring. I mean, sure, we probably know Alabama is going to play Coastal Carolina. We probably know the result. It's not going to be really pretty at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't care. I just want to see a game. I want to see them play and see if they're smart enough. Maybe they can make something happen. They're going to take more chances, do more onside kicks, like the team out of Arkansas, the high school team out of Arkansas that never kicks off. They just do onside after onside after onside.
Yeah.
And their percentages, I mean, I don't know what that would ever be the game plan. All I'm saying is it would just make it much more fun. And it's just boring because we kind of know ahead of the season, we know who's going to be there at the end. Unless somebody, something happens amazingly in the ACC, pretty sure Clemson's going to make it there. I mean, Alabama has to have a huge train wreck. Even if they're the number 2 team, they somehow make it in there. I mean, that's my point is it's just the same stuff and the same people. And it's that national thing that we're going to talk about anyways with recruiting. It's all you ever see in the national recruiting. And people are like, why do those teams always have the best recruiting classes? Because their brand is on the TV all the time.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, guys. It's not anything spectacular.
They call it the SEC, but it's the Alabama network.
Yeah, I mean,
Paul Feinbaum.
Yeah,
I mean, he is Alabama. Period.
Yeah,
he's got a syndicated show.
Yeah, and you wanted one of those shirts from the Coastal Carolina, game when they played BYU. I mean,
love it
because it was cool. Your Raging Cajun thing, because you got to see a fun team. I mean, that's just. To me, it would just
bought a Raging Cajun sweater because I love the team and I love the nickname. I love the colors. I watched a few of their games. Never had seen them play before this year. Coastal Carolina, I've never seen them play before this year. And I don't care what the score is and who they're playing. If they get in the playoffs and they have an opportunity to compete, even if it's for a short period of time, those kids go down and score a touchdown. You know how that bench is going to be? Even if they lose that game, they're still going to be like, man, we were here. I rather go to the dance than sit at home, I'd rather go. Hey, there's a Friday night. There's a party at the school. There's a Friday night dance. You want to go? Yeah, I want to go. No, you're not a senior. You're just a freshman. You can't go. Oh, this dance is only for seniors. No, everybody should be welcome to go. If you've done enough to deserve an opportunity to go dance, put on your dancing shoes, you splash on the little cologne, you get your hair done, you get dressed up, and all of a sudden, you look around and you're dancing with the prettiest girl. And if you didn't go, you never had a chance.
Absolutely. Cannot agree with you more. It's just, even to your point, even the bowl system themselves. I mean, you're not real hard to watch a bowl game during the bowl season and look in the stands and there ain't nobody there.
Yeah.
So they get more people in the stands. So the only way to get more people in the stands is you have to make it more exciting. You have to be playing for something. And so it's a win-win for everybody. It's my frustration with the whole thing. That's what makes, we both know that, Coastal Carolina, Raging Cajuns, Cincinnati fans this year.
Cincinnati, great team.
Would have traveled anywhere to play a playoff game. Their fans, and I know it was a COVID year. I'm just taking COVID out of it. If it was a real year and they had 8 teams or 16, 24, and they were playing, their fans would have traveled like you'd never seen and would have taken it over. And it'd been great. Let's face it, the beauty of the final 64, the bigger dance, is that what happens? The trickle down effect. All the bars get busier. The drafts, the guys get busy. I mean, everybody's winning. There's nobody losing here. Everybody's winning.
Absolutely.
Me, that's my frustration with the whole deal. It's like you only have 2 games and 4 teams, and it's the same 4, and it's just getting boring. And it's just not fun.
So 27% down in viewership this year.
Yeah.
Just to kind of throw that number out there and put in perspective, right? 27% down in viewership in a year when people can't go anywhere. Think about that. It's not like they were out hanging out at the at the bar, unless you're in Florida, at the bar, and you're partying or whatever case may be, you're hanging out with Governor DeSantis, and having some Mai Tais, that's different. I'm talking about everybody else. 27% decided to watch maybe Netflix or something else and tune in to these bowl games or these championship games because they already know what the outcome is. And like you said, it's boring. It's like, hey, tell UCF, a few years ago, oh, you can't come to the dance. Wouldn't they have loved an opportunity to go out there, right? And Milton McKenzie, right now he's transferred out. He had that horrific injury. He's going to Florida State next year. Ask him, 4 years ago, if he would have loved an opportunity to go up against a Clemson or Alabama and that whole squad. And when Frost was still there also, right? Before he goes to Nebraska, on his way out, let me put on my resume that I went toe to toe with these guys. And as a fan, I want to see it. We've talked about it before. I think UCF is the best a football program in Florida in the last 5 years, easily. I would have loved to have seen it.
Well, let's talk about the bowl game they played, UCF versus Auburn. Frost's last game.
Yeah,
it was a great game.
Yeah,
it was the SEC versus the outside Power Five. I mean, that's what we're saying. That's what you could get if you can make this happen. It's their one shot. It's their one time. Their one thing. And it was just a great game. I mean, it's just fun to see the kids celebrate. I mean, that's their thriller in Manila. I mean, they're going to throw the haymakers because they got nothing to lose. Nobody said they should be there anyways. So why let them? So I hope they look at this bigger piece, and I hope that, it'll be interesting to see who the Pac-12 chooses for their commissioner, because I think that person has to get in there and says, we have to be a part of the game. The Power Five has to be, at 8 teams at least, if not more than that, for us to be involved. And if you want us to be part of the bigger picture for the game of football, because we have to have a West Coast, appearance and part of the game. If they don't, then I think they're missing out.
Larry Scott stepping down in June, or I don't know, stepping down, pushed out. Whatever. He's supposedly leaving in June, so we'll see what happens. Any thoughts on who may replace him? Have you heard anything, or it's just too early in the process right now?
Well, the early, really quick name came out was Oliver Luck, and I think he is a good choice. I think he would be a good guy to do because of his prior, just number one, him being from the NCAA, being in there, understanding, knowing, make sure to talk to the right people. 2, he was the head of the commissioner for the XFL, so he has done rights deals where he's done it with ABC or Fox or Disney or ESPN, Disney, obviously. So he knows how to get this thing done, and they have to have that has to be the kind of person they have. I know you've mentioned other people from Disney or ESPN. That those are kind of people they need to get in there to have that position. If they don't, then they're going to miss the boat, and they're going to be left out again. And they've got to refigure. I think personally, if I was commissioner, I would be running to CBS to take that 12:30 game that CBS is now void of, because the SEC is now going to ESPN at that 12:30 spot. And so see if looking for a spot. I'd be running. I don't know who that person is who can run and make that happen, but I would get that spot if I was them. And if I was the Power 5 guys, I'd be the ones running there trying to get that spot, saying I need to be that 12:30 game on CBS every Saturday afternoon.
Well, is that a problem? Does that create a problem with the fact that Larry Scott is not out and that they're actually delaying it to June? Or, can that be problematic? Do you think Larry might just say, hey, I'm cruising till June, or saying, all right, I want to go out with a bang and maybe I'll put some things in place on my way out?
Well, there is kind of the thought that Larry's basically, he got a nice $1.9 million interest-free loan. And if you do the math from here to the end of June, that comes out to about 1.9. So maybe he's just working his job and he's paying off his loan. There's that thought. So he's not even in the office. They are talking about leaving San Francisco, maybe coming up to Portland and things like that. So the rent there was too expensive. They got to get out of that whole deal. So, they can look for cost cutting, doing those things. But I think if you can't, I don't care who you are, the CEOs, whoever they want to call themselves, the chancellors, the presidents, you can't wait. You can't wait till Larry leaves. You have to have this thing going now. And I think if they don't announce something within the next month, I think they're really missing a huge opportunity, and they're going to be left outside looking in again. And I think that they can't afford that. I think they have to get something done soon, sooner than later. To me, if you don't, as well as I do, the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10, they're going to continue to just go right down that road, and they're going to make it happen. And there's talk of some of those guys, the AD from Gene Smith from Ohio State becoming the guy. He's been out here at Arizona State. Byrne from Texas. He's another name that they've mentioned. I don't know if they could get the guy from the SEC to come out here, but they need somebody big and understands it, gets the bigger picture, how to make this thing more revenue sport. Not to dump on Larry anymore, but Larry's vision for the Pac-12 network was to give viewership to the Olympic sports. Well, you better know who your bread and your butter is in your league, and that's football and basketball. And if you don't get those guys on the TV, then
it's one of the weirdest things to watch a network and not really see any commercials. And to me, working in television for so long, I don't understand how you don't make money if all of your commercials are school-based. Right. We'll this school, that school, where's your Gatorade? Where's your Nike, Adidas? Where are the sponsors? Because I would think that sponsors would love to be on a college network where every other commercial you're seeing, especially when you got Oregon in the Pac-12. How is Nike not a main sponsor here in the Pac-12 where you're not seeing their commercials, where they're not doing different things, and you put on the Pac-12 network and it just feels like, except for their shows, it just feels like one big infomercial. And I just have trouble understanding that concept. And most likely it's a deal that they made with the colleges in order to have exclusive rights, because it's something that we did when we had a high school channel in New York. Primarily the commercials were ways to help these schools with their branding and promote certain things, but that was different. We had MSG and Cablevision money, Cablevision, the billionaires that run it with the Dolan, Charles and James Dolan, or well, not James, because Daddy Charles don't want James touching the money. He already screwed up a deal with the Wiz years ago and kicked him out of the boardroom and said, go play with your Knicks and Rockettes and Radio City, stay out of the boardroom. Anyway, I digress. But my point is, there's money to be had. I'm pretty sure that they would want to capitalize on that with sponsors and bring in more revenue. And when you put on the network, you just don't see it.
Well, you hit it right on the nose. I mean, number one, you have Nike in your league. I mean, Phil Knight we all know, is the money guy behind Oregon. We all get that. But to your point, why would you not move yourself back to Portland? You have Nike, you have Adidas, you have Under Armour. I mean, they're all the brands down there. It's simple, it's easy. You can cross work with them. It's they're creatives, they're smart, they know how to make these ads, all these things. It just makes totally sense that they would end up doing that. You know that better than I do. I agree 1,000% to you. Even why does the Pac-12 have 6 different stations? I mean, networks. I mean, it's just
they can't
even fill up the one. They got 6. Like, well, I watch the 6 or I watch the 1. So they really got to come out. They got to have somebody strong out here.
And it's not on every platform, which is a whole other problem, right? Only certain platforms you can watch the Pac-12. It's not like ESPN where you get a sports package. No, that's a whole other negotiation, and if you have one network then you don't have the other. And so if you want to watch the Pac-12, then, you have to have, whether it's Xfinity or YouTube, but if you have Sling and you don't have the blue, but you have the orange, whatever, it gets damn crazy. But the point is, if you want people to watch a network, you have to make it accessible, and if you, and if if you're going to lose a little cash just so you can get more eyes on it. So I guess I'm going to bring it back. I guess the point is, whoever's coming in is not just running a conference. They're going to have to put people in place that understands media, that understands how to do even a greater marketing to bring in more people, to get more eyes. And like you mentioned, maybe whether it's the CBS package at 12:30, but the problem is, and the same thing, and I go back to McCaffrey because it's just a name that stands out for me. On the East Coast, nobody was watching him. All the games are too late. They're like, who? Yeah, okay, whatever. The teams are terrible. There's lack of visibility. He may or may not be on television. And then on the grandest stage, which is, we wait for these bowl games, he decided to opt out. He was like, yeah, I'm done. I had record-breaking year the last year. I played great this year. I got hurt, and now I'm just not going to play, and it's just like, it shouldn't be like that. We all know who Tua is, right? We all know who Mac is, right? Before this year, if Mac played somewhere else and he had the same numbers, are we really interested? If he played at, whatever, right? I mean, are we really that interested? Probably not. But once again, Alabama is dominating, and they've set the example of what to do. And starting with today, they had the #1 class, supposedly, 24/7 with their weird point system, is saying that they had the best class ever. Alabama just finds a way to kind of keep bringing in these athletes and setting the standard on recruiting.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's been on Twitter. One of the kids who was being recruited by Coach Saban put on a film, the Zoom meeting that he had
recorded
with
the phone call. Yep.
Yeah. There's an ethics thing there, and we can argue about that. The point of what I'm about to say, what Coach Saban was saying, he does get it down. He knows his spiel, and he says, and he's right. He goes, our best go against the best every day. And if you want to go to the NFL and you want to be that defensive end or that offensive tackle, you're going to go against that. It wins that award. And so better finds better. And Alabama is just a running machine. And, before we started the show, you and I were laughing about it. I mean, they get 2 former NFL head coaches to be their position coaches. Alabama machine just keeps rolling, keeps going. He loses a lot of good assistants down there. Our good family, good friend, Jeff Banks, ends up being special teams coordinator, go over to Texas. And, so he loses some of his recruiting prowess and all these guys, but I guarantee you that machine will be up and running, again. And, let's look at the top 4 programs. I mean, the top 4 teams that, with the classes. Bama's #1, Ohio State's #2, Georgia's #3, and LSU and Clemson's #5. Who's been in the national championship the last 4 or 5 years, and who's won it?
Yeah.
That's to our point, to you and I, that, this is what we need to change with the national picture when it comes to the playoffs. And, those brands are going to continue to do really, really well with their classes because they have a story to tell. So we can graduate you, get you out of here, get you moved on, and you're going to go to the NFL, what your dream is to do. And we have a system that does it and makes it happen. So it's, the rich get richer, as they say, and the scary part is the kid who's here locally, J2 Tamalao, who's not gonna make his announcement in another 2 months because he says he wants to get onto the campus of Ohio State. Yeah. He could or Ohio State to the next level of how good those classes could be. So it's a big deal. It's both those schools are going to do well again this year and compete to the highest level. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what and so and then kind of the next part of that whole question. Everybody always asks is, when's Coach Saban going to retire? Well, he just got his best class he ever had.
Why?
I'm thinking he's not going to retire for at least 4 to 5 years. I mean, he got, his last class just won him a national championship. They thought was the best, the 17 class. So,
yeah, and it's funny. We've spoken with enough coaches also to know by now the wives don't really want them home. They, like you go yell at those kids over there. You don't need to come home. But I'm the captain of the ship. I'm the captain. I'm the captain. This is my domain. You're lucky. You're not even assistant because you're never around. You're the water boy. Nick Saban, you're the water boy. So so Nick's like, I'm going to stay here where I'm king of the castle. But when he gets home, that's not the case, as we all know, right? As we all live in that scenario. So, you're having great recruiting classes. You have 3 of the top 6 recruiters in the country. In fact, I believe it was Charles Huff was the #1 recruiter. He's a running back coach. He was given the best recruiter of the year award. And then I believe it was Sam Huff. Why am I thinking Sam Huff? Not Sam Huff. It's Charles Huff and then Carl Scott. He's the DB coach. 1 and 2, and then Jeff Banks, special teams coach, was ranked number 6. So they're just kicking them out. So whether it's athletes, whether it's coaches, whether it's recruiters, they're getting Florida, they're getting Texas, they're grabbing California, and they're just keeping it going. The machine is just moving, the wheels spin. And yeah, Nick Saban was great on that call, but he really didn't say much. He doesn't need to recruit. He don't need to do anything. He's like, we got the best athletes. If you listen to all these other schools and they say that if you come here, you're not going to compete, that's not true. All of our guys play. All of our guys compete. All of our guys have a chance to win. If I got to say anything more about Alabama, then you're just not going to get it, and you're just not a Crimson Tide. Bye. You don't need to say anything. It really. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
Well, the thing too is that's kind of the pitch nowadays with these coaches, which is what you want. I mean, you say, hey, well, don't come here because we have a loaded quarterback room. Well, then you're not a competitor. Well, you want kids who want to compete. You want kids to compete all the time, and you're going to compete at the highest level. One of the great lessons I ever heard was from Demetrius DuBose, the kid from O'Day that went to Notre Dame, and he came back and said, Coach, man, he goes, I was the Gatorade Player of the Year for Washington. I was, this and that and that. He goes, I go to Notre Dame. My position coach is Barry Alvarez. And he goes, I got Stonebreaker and all those guys in front of me. And I forget that those guys were all Americans in Chicago, Georgia, Florida. He goes, then everybody here, they're all Gatorade, all American. Oh, so I got to compete. So that's my point to these kids. I mean, you're going wherever you're going to compete for the position because that's the nature of the game. And here's the scary part for you guys. The next guy they're coming in to replace you is the next class. They don't recruit because we really like to have a couple guys in the wide receiver room. I'll give you a good example here locally. It's Emeka Ukaba from Stillcombe is going to go to Ohio State. Yeah, he said G. Jr. was his best recruiter. Well, G. Scott Jr. better think about that guy is coming to take my job. Yeah, you may be the greatest recruiter for him, but he's coming to take your job. Yeah, and that's which is part of the program. That's what you're there for. You're there to help the kids to come to recruit to your school, and you want to have the best players to have a chance to win the national championship. And that's why you get why Washington maybe has missed out on some of the bigger guys nationally because again their brand is out there and they get to see it a lot and it's easy to get away and you can now travel pretty quickly and easily back and forth. We can Zoom call mom and dad. You don't have to do this thing. Don't see them in the spring. It's a different world that we live in today. So it's my point is that these young people have got to understand that the recruiting is different. And today Brandon Huffman made a great point, which is if you look at kind of the classes, they're about 15. Now in Alabama, it's interesting. Alabama with like 28 kids in their class. They didn't go because they're not going to do the portal. Everybody else in the country is hoping some of their kids leave to go out in the portal and they'll be like this trying to catch me in Alabama. But my point being is that most of these classes are 15 and they're saying, look at the Central Washingtons and the Western Oregons and those, they're getting really good classes because there's not enough scholarships anymore. Yeah. And even I heard Coach Lake talk a couple days ago, first time in their program ever, they have over 100 guys in their program that are scholarship players because of the numbers situation with the COVID, being able to add the seniors and all that kind of stuff. These kids better really catch on quick. If you get an offer early in the deal, don't play the game. Don't think you're going to play the game because they're going to fill up fast because that portal thing, which I know we're going to talk about, is full to the brim. And a lot of these coaches are thinking, man, I got to win right away. And I'm going to either have a proven college kid or a maybe chance of a high school kid. And maybe I can develop them. I'm going to take the proven kid.
Before we get into the transfer portal, you mentioned two kids with JT and Amika, right? And those are the top two players coming out of the state of Washington. One of them is already committed to Ohio State. The other one is most likely going to attend Ohio State. He mentioned that they might take up to April or so before they make a decision on that. But it's pretty much, let's just say it's a foregone conclusion, right? Ohio State came in here last year, whether it's grabbing a G. Scott and grabbing some other players. How is Ohio State, and I would have to, I guess, look into it more unless you know, as far as their recruiting system, how is Ohio State grabbing these kids from Washington year in and year out?
Well, I think it's lesson recruiting 101 now is different. It's just the way this world works. I mean, it's vice versa. I mean, what I'm saying is kids can now, I mean, you think about this year, they had a pandemic year. A lot of kids just did virtual tours. So
Yeah.
you can virtually at the facility. It's not the same experience of being on the campus, being around the coaches. I get all that. My point being is the internet, being able to look things up, find things out, figure out some things, and vice versa. You know, these recruiting agencies put out all the kids, and they kind of do the groundwork for these guys. So they cross-reference lists, and then they pick and choose and pinpoint who they want and look at and things like that. And that's just the world we live in. And you know, you used to think that you'd be Ohio State and you maybe dip over to Michigan a little bit, run on down to Pennsylvania, and if you're lucky, you got a Florida kid, maybe take a couple of Texas kids and just stay right there in the middle of the country because of the time to travel and all that. What you and I are doing right here, Zoom calls, you can do those all day long with the kid. You can text a kid all day long. I mean, they're already letting the juniors for this year started being recruited, which is not usually the deal. They have to wait till the next year. They're letting them, you know, a year early. So it's just the way the world works. It's, you know, these kids they can get enough information about these schools and vice versa. The coaches can get enough information. I mean, again, you know, for people that my stepson's at Penn State University, there is they've got 11 people that do recruiting. That's all they do.
Wow.
And they get great lists and they do these things and they'll come in and, you know, Joe just offered the linebacker Mina from Eastside Catholic, who's a junior last week out here from Penn State. So it's really easy because of the internet and things like that. And just the world we live in, Twitter, and guys can put out their information and, you know, sensations get quickly looked at. It's just a different world that way. And so you've got to think of it differently as a recruiter, you know, as a recruitee. If you're a student athlete, it's a different world, and these guys can go wherever they want, and they will. And as you said, Alabama, they're proven they just pick and puck and do what they want because that's who they are. So,
What are going to be some of the concerns? I've heard from different people and some coaches talk about the transfer portal. They're starting to seem like there's a really, really big concern because there's so many players are going into this portal, and some of these teams and coaches are feeling like these kids are going to be left. There's going to be kids that are going to be left out in the cold. You know, they're leaving a place where they had a scholarship. They were part of a program. They're looking for greener pastures. And because there's so many kids out there in the portal, you're going to get a handful of kids, you know, for lack of a better word, a handful of kids that are going to miss out and going to find themselves on the out. Two things. What do you think about that scenario? And two, what happens to these kids if they don't find another place to play?
Well, first of all, you know, to the bigger question about the portal, I you know, I don't know how people term it, the transfer world we live in, the changing of jobs, you know, with millennials or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I like the portal from that perspective. I think kids find an easy way to get out and not compete and try to get the deal. That's number one. Number two, it is a, you know, for the arguments, people would say, well, the coaches get to leave, they get to go to new jobs, why can't kids be able to move? Well, okay, I can see that. And I think that they have made the portal was initially designed kind of for that. Here's where what you're saying is so true. And that's the thing that people don't really get. It's a two-way street. You walk out that door, you're not coming back to that program because that program's like, well, you left us, man. We're not bringing you back. No. You walked out the door. It's just like a marriage, right? You walked out the door, you left. Here's your bags. You're gone. Bye-bye. See ya. And if you don't have something in that pipe, I mean, there's 3,000 kids in the portal right now. So coaches can pick and choose and do whatever. Before it was like 50 kids, and you'd be like, well, God, if we can get that one kid from USC, that'd be really great and help us. Yeah. Now, I mean, you know, Washington today got a wide receiver from Texas Tech, you know, in the portal. Now it's going to help out their wide receiver room, sure. But my point is, boy, it's you got to understand it's a two-way street, and there's going to be some burn. I've said it from the beginning on our show, on your show. Number one, and I think it's going to be the year of the decommit, the year of the transfer, and everything. I think it's as bad as it is right now. I think in the fall of next year, it's going to be 10,000 times worse, because I think a lot of those freshman kids are going to go there and go, Coach Saban, he was real nice on that Zoom call, but he wasn't so nice when I threw that pick at practice yesterday. He was a little rougher than I thought and I really don't like to have to get up at 6 every morning and do these weightlifting things that they want to do here at Alabama. And he's out the door. I think that that's going to happen, unfortunately. And really, what's my biggest concern, and again, to the amazement of me, how quiet the NCAA is in this deal. They still have not addressed how they're going to deal with the numbers with scholarships. They still, there's not even a plan. Like by 2026, you have to be down to 85, 95 next year. And then, it's 90 the next year, then 85. And so you got to figure this thing out. And without having to do that, I can't even imagine if Washington has over 100 kids in their program. Would you imagine what Alabama could have? But they could have 120 Division I scholarship athletes running on the field in your game against Austin, PA next year. How would you feel? You'd be like, we're not playing them, are we? Because we have no chance. We can't even play their guys at the end of the aisle of the row that we can't even guys. So they've got to figure that out. And to me, it's the bigger thing. And I've said it before, and it becomes a cost thing. I mean, you look at the UW softball program. They had to pass the hat with their donors, and they came up with $50,000 to take care of their softball team. You do that over at Central Washington, you're going to come up with $50, and it's not going to be able to cover these kids, and a lot of kids are going to get left out. And it's going to be sad. It's a deal, and so you need to really think about the bigger picture. Really, where are you going to go? Where do you want to get your education, your degree, and vice versa? I mean, some of these seniors, are they really going to milk it for another year? Do you really want to do this thing, or do you want to get on with life? Are you really going to, is that really going to be your 6th year? Are you really going to make it? Is it really going to help you in the NFL draft? If not, you just got to move on and move on in life. And I know that's rough to hear sometimes, but boy, I see a lot of these 3,000 kids in the portal. They're going to get burned. If you don't really have, you and I can kind of talk about this in our earlier days of our lives, in our high school years, if you're leaving Susie, and you don't know that, Sally's across the street because you got a new one, you may not want to play that game, because if you don't have that, it's already across the street, you're going to get burned, man. And I think a lot of these coaches, they got 3,000 kids to pick from. They're going to be really choosy. And a lot of people are going to get burned in it.
NCAA, you mentioned, Mark Emmert has not mentioned anything. They've kicked the can down the road on the whole likeness situation. And then, a couple of days ago, they're talking about a college football video game coming out. And it's just mind boggling to me that they haven't even figured out these things. And then let alone, I would think eventually, and they've talked about capping the transfer portal so you could transfer once or not. But right now there's so much that's undecided and so much that needs planning and just some leadership so people can start to plan. So whether it's, a university, a president, a coach, an assistant coach, a player, a mom, a dad, they need to have an idea. And my concern is that they're going to do something in the future and say, effectively, fall of whatever, where you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't think that was going to happen that fast. Or, I would have done something differently. So there's a lot of things that are really concerning. What stands out for you the most? And I know you mentioned a few of them already, and not to make you repeat yourself, but what really stands out to you the most for someone that helps with the recruiting process, helps with these parents with, eligibility and things like that, that if you have to talk to a kid or a parent in 2021 looking ahead, what is something that you really kind of want to emphasize to them?
Well, the biggest thing is the numbers game. You've got to really figure out the numbers game, where you're sitting in this whole deal. You have to understand most programs, like I said, in the country, took about 15 kids to their programs and leaving themselves 10 spots, maybe to work on the portal and things like that. Maybe they go up to 18, so there's 7 spots or whatever. So to play this game, to think you're going to, well, I'm going to play Washington State against Washington for a little bit in recruiting, that's not going to work. And you really got to think these things through. And it's, again, the trickle down effect. Maybe you're a little frustrated and Washington really isn't offering you, and Eastern Washington is, or, so you better jump on the Eastern Washington offer and opportunity, kind of breaking it down to the FCS. I mean, we only have a few teams in the Big Sky that are going to actually play in the league this year. Montana State have opted out. That's, Portland State's opted out. So it's a rough, again, years and where you sit on this deal and how the whole thing's going to play out. And to your point, which is really my concern, again, it's just the leadership. You just have to sit back, reverse it, and say, by X year, we're going to be down to 85 again by 2028. I don't know what year. I don't care.
Yeah.
But the point is, they have to start talking, because then you start to do the math backwards towards you, and you can start figuring out whether you're going to be in the game plan or not. I would honestly, if I was a student athlete right now, I'd really have option A, my dream school, Notre Dame, Clemson, whatever, but I'd have a lot of FCS, lower level programs in the back pocket, and really thinking about that's really where my chance and opportunity is going to go, because those big guys are going to just say, hey, we can just play the portal game. We can play what we want, do what we want, and we're going to just, take the left, what we want. So it's a numbers game. That's my biggest issue. And again, I think the lack of leadership from the NCAA and just a vision of doing it. And you kind of jump on what you're saying. Even this week, the NCAA put a case all the way to the Supreme Court to have them help decide whether, how far this level can do for the like and kindness and the monetary thing. I'm like, you haven't said a thing, you haven't done a thing, and all of a sudden you just put in a court case to the Supreme Court that you'd like to have them be the judge and jury for this thing. Well, you're the leadership. Where's your leadership? Put out your plan, and then if it becomes judicial, then we'll deal with that. But at least everybody can know it, and at least it has they have to deal with. I would hate to be an AD right now and trying to figure things out and how we're going to do the money and how is this going to make this happen. You and I both, we talk off the air a lot. Let's be honest. That's what happened in Arizona. They chopped 30 people down in Arizona this year, and they got rid of their old coach and they brought in the new coach, and 30 people lost their jobs, and probably more coming. And that's really the truth, Matt. Washington said that they're probably going to have some more layoffs, and they're going to have to do some things. And again, it's just a lack of leadership. It's just a vision. I don't care what it is, but at least you have to put it out there. You have to
put something pen to paper. Put something up. Put something on there so you can work with, at least, even if you disagree with it. But at least have something in place to work with so you can move forward in whatever direction that is. But right now, there's nothing in place. And what's scary about it is we're in February. There's a lot of things that can happen. We have no idea what's going to happen with just life in general, but certain things are just not in place or being spoken about. And, the matter with the NCAA, with the likeness and the monetary and everything else, that was supposed to be addressed a month ago, if not long. They had something, they had a certain date that they were going to address it, and they were like, oh, national title game, just move it aside. We'll deal with that later. So we'll see what happens. Going back to the kids, we see Hewitt's coming in. He's going to be at least competing for the quarterback job with Washington. They had two quarterbacks going to the transfer portal. Sermon's going to Central Michigan, and who's the other kid? Ethan Garbers, and he's supposed to be going to UCLA. You mentioned the FCS. Can you see the FCS kind of, maybe cashing in is the wrong word, but taking advantage of the situation where some of these kids might be left out in the cold, and they say, hey, this school won't take you, but come to Papa. We'll take care of you. You come play here, especially, whether it's, these FCS powerhouse like a North Dakota or something like that, saying, hey, we're not D1, but we're not the FBS, but we're the FCS, and we're at the top of the food chain. Can you see them cashing in and getting a lot of talent going forward?
Without a doubt. Again, it's that trickle down effect. Again, I think that the lower level programs can really cash in on this deal. But again, are they going to be held to the number of 63 scholarships at that level. Is that really going to be the number? Or do they have open number enrollment right now? I mean, let's be honest. If you allow anybody to run whatever they want numbers wise, they're going to abuse this system. I mean, North Dakota ends up with 95 kids in their program, and they're already the powerhouse they are. I mean, nobody's going to beat them for a while. I mean, they got a quarterback they got a kid that's going to play, probably go in the NFL this year, who played one game in this year. I mean, that's how
Trey
good
Lance.
they are. Yeah. So my point is, you are absolutely right. I mean, there's some really good things for the lower level guys, and but again, the ego of a lot of football players is going to have to be probably eat a little humble pie and have to maybe go to that level. But you still have an opportunity in a great place, and a lot of those programs are, as we know, we've seen North Dakota, they can play with the big boys when they want to. So don't act like they're not a good enough program, because they are definitely good enough. But kind of going back to the FCS, I mean, the kind of the questions that we always ask in the beginning of the year, they're going to the spring games right now. I mean,
right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or what does that look like? How do those games work out? Do their kids end up, staving off this COVID and don't have any issues? They're really not playing for anything. They have no fans in the stands. It's costing money, bottom line.
Yeah.
They have no revenue from TV commercials, nothing. There's no Big Sky Network. So they're just playing for the love of the game. Get a couple kids that moving around, get some action that way. But I question that highly. And then we turn around and then flip it back. And then you got to be back here in August, ready to get ready for a full season. And again, they're only going to play 6 games or, 6 to 8 games. So that's,
Yeah, but they're talking about a playoffs. We mentioned it a while ago. They talking about playoffs. They're talking about all these different scenarios. Apparently, the smart kids said way back when that they weren't going to play, right? And back, August, Ivy League was like, we're out. And then eventually the rest of FCS was like, well, we're going to push it to spring. Ivy League turned around and said, yeah, we're out. We're not playing. They know something. They figured out something, and most likely the economics of things, and along with other issues and concerns. But there's a reason why the Ivy League said no, thank you. And I know they're trying to figure out some things with lacrosse. I have a buddy that his son is at Dartmouth, and they're thinking about maybe trying to do kind of like I don't know, I wouldn't call it a scrimmage, but kind of find a way to all the close schools maybe play one another and play a couple times and try to have, and that's a whole different animal, right? We're talking about kind of like these club sports and stuff like that. But Ivy League said, no, we're good. We'll see you. The rest of them are trying, right? And obviously you mentioned it before, and there's been a couple schools that have already said, yeah, this is not going to work out. One, will they try to get a season in? 2, do you expect a lot more teams to eventually look at numbers or whatever the case may be, whether it's monetary or COVID or whatever case it is, that they say, okay, no, this is not going to work out. We're stepping out.
Well, what's his name already? Elkhorn State has already opted out of the HBCU just this week. So I do think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to numbers. And in what you just said is the biggest thing is, once the team comes down with COVID, how are you going to handle it? Those programs don't have the monetary systems and money to afford the cleanliness and the testing and all the things that you have to do. Most of those teams are going to travel by bus, not by plane. You can't, get your own charter now because you can't afford it. So there's, at the end of the day, they'll probably get a season in, sort of like the big boys. But will it be like a Pac-12 4-game schedule? I don't know. Again, I beg the question, why we're even doing this. I think that's the number one thing that they should probably look at and say, no, we're just not going to do this thing. We're going to call it good. We're moving on and just go forward. And it's a sad part about, what you were saying to the bigger picture. I mean, let's be honest, we're having a March Madness tournament, not because we want to see if Gonzaga, my dad's team, can win the national championship. We're doing it for 670 million reasons.
Yeah.
And they're not for the fans. It's for the money, because they have to, fill the coffers, before, if they don't do that, there's going to be a lot more carnage at the college level when it comes to, trickle down effect economically. So they're going to make it happen from that standpoint. with the basketball, but the football thing, I just don't see it. I don't see how it pencils out. Why it even makes sense to even do. I just don't. I just think it's really, really, really about ego driven, about just having a season, because I think they need to do it. And I think at the end of the day, I think they just need to do the right thing and just call it a year. And just, Bobby Hauck talked about it in Montana. It wasn't about them not wanting to play the season. It was about, he goes, we can't practice in the middle of winter in Missoula. Okay, and it's like 34 below. I mean, our kids can't practice. We don't have an indoor facility.
Yeah.
So it just isn't conducive. I mean, think about the Washington State high school kids that started on Monday. It was pouring rain. They're not used to playing in the middle of winter. It was horrible. You're not on a grass. You're not on a AstroTurf field. You're on a regular grass field. It was not a fun day on first day of practice. Now the kids were happy to be out on the field. That's a whole different thing. And I'm not saying those high school kids shouldn't be playing, for the mental and getting physical exercise. That's not my point. My point is, boy, you're just changing the time of the year. It just makes it harder on these kids. And boy, I say, for what reason?
And I think it's important that you mention that, because that is not the point, right? So for anyone that kind of gets stuck on, they should be active, they should be doing stuff, they should be with their peers. I wouldn't have a problem if coaches were doing things, running practices, doing 7-on-7s, getting it, doing the things that maybe they would normally be doing at this time anyway, because so many people, or not so many people, but people don't realize that when the football season is over, all you're doing is getting ready for spring ball. You're getting ready to go back in and work out and do 7-on-7s and do different things. So you can still have the players, the student athletes participate, be a part of something, but doesn't mean that you need to put on a helmet and go play another team in a different city and put yourself in different situations where there are risk factors. You can still be a student athlete. Unfortunately, you may miss a year of playing, but there's other things to kind of, keep you busy. It's almost kind of like, after school care, or something like that, like there's things to kind of keep you busy, keep you in shape, keep you motivated, and get you prepared for the following season.
Well, we just happen to be really lucky here in the Seattle area. We just happen to have the two best players in the country in two different sports, JT Tomalao and Paulo Banchero in basketball. Yeah. And I would ask, not of their parents. I know one of the parents, but my point is, what's it in for them to even play a season? I mean, JT could get injured. He could get injured playing this next 6 weeks. Is it worth it? Paulo Banchero going to Duke University. Is it really worth it to go out and play a shortened 10-game season to prove that you're the best basketball team in the city of Seattle in a shortened season? I mean, I don't know if it is. I know kids want to compete in the highest level. That's, again, not my point. But boy, man, that cost, that risk reward, man, I would just hate to see one of those kids, one of the top kids in the country, just go down to a needless injury just to say their ego, they got their season in. And in Paulo's case, I know that this weekend I happened to see that his mom was posting that he was playing down in Vegas anyways, playing basketball. So he's playing basketball. That's not, so he's getting his thing. And so to come back for a high school season.
Well, and it's tough because, we want to be clear. We have friends in the business, right? Derek Sparks, Pacific Lutheran team plays today on Wednesday, their first game of the season. They start today, right? And he's a friend of the show, and we followed his career and him being with Washington State, and everything that he's done, with Coaches versus Cancer, and a bunch of different things, and just on a personal level, our good friend, Juan Cotto, he's down and helping out the kids at Rainier Beach. He's helping them out, and they're kind of getting ready for their season, and they have a monster at offensive line that's going to be a high, one of these top recruits that I think he's verbally committed already to UW. And it's just, they want to play, the kids want to play, the coaches want to play, and but at what cost, and when. And I think, like anything, I'm gonna give a bad analogy here, but it's okay because I stated it was a bad analogy, so I think that makes it okay, right? It's almost kind of like if you were at the bar, right, and you had yourself a beer, and you're hanging out, and you have to make an adult decision to say, okay, when is enough? When am I going to be a staggering fool and this is just going to turn into a bad night? You have to make these decisions. And my point is, when does the league, whether it's the WIAA or the coaches themselves or the principals or the AD, say, yeah, this is not it? And that's what I'm hoping for, right? If they're going to try to go on ahead, and we'll see if a season really kind of goes through, but they're getting ready for a season, are there going to be adults in the room that are going to make tough decisions that are going to piss off parents, players, and some coaches for the benefit of the greater good? And if that can happen, and if you could be reassured of that, then you're like, sure, go ahead. But the fact is that most likely that's not going to be the case for every scenario.
Yeah, well, and I think that the other thing too, people need to really know about is that they're literally going to try to get 3 seasons in from February to June. I mean, think about that, folks. You're going to get your fall, your winter, and your spring sports in those months. All the sports. I mean, they're literally quitting football on day X, and the next day basketball starts. It's not like they have the 10-day, rest period. You can get ready. And I know coaches will be smart. They probably won't put the football players immediately into the basketball drills and all that, kind of give them a little bit of rest, and if they're smart. My point is, boy, that's a lot to put on these kids physically. If you have a true multi-sport athlete, maybe when I was 17, 16, I maybe could have been able to do it, but boy, man, that's a lot to ask of kids. And that's when you get, major injuries. And we see it all the time when, NFL guys don't hit during the summer, workouts, and the workouts that they do in the summer, and they come out and they play their first game and they get that first hit, and you just see a guy go down, and it's just like, and it's because he hasn't trained, he hasn't done those things. And yesterday there was a big report that came out about concussions at practices in high school practice, in football practices. So is that we're hitting too hard in practice? I mean, I don't know. But it just, to me, that's a really scary part. Really, the macro view is we're going to put all these kids in these amount of time frame and do these things. And are we doing the right thing? As a former high school coach, my biggest question I always thought of the whole time this happened. And again, I commend these coaches for what they're doing. I have utmost respect for them. But for me personally, as I've known, especially when I coached in the public school system, we relied on 16 to 18-year-old girl managers for us to bring out the water bottles, do all the things, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to have those girls be responsible, and it could be a guy too, but be responsible for the cleanliness of the locker room, of the training room, making sure the water bottles are clean, that, are we doing, and where's the school district's responsibility in this? Are they providing us with more extra wipes and cleanliness? And, I saw coaches this week were posting pictures of Lysol and wipes and cleaners. And, I know a buddy of mine is down in Florida, they were doing the summer workouts, and they'd have 10 balls, and they would take the 10 balls and they put them in a bag, and this special heated bag, and they go put them in the sun, and they pull out 10 new balls for 10 minutes. And then they reverse the ball. They ended up having to buy like 90 balls because they just kept on moving the bags in and out and only used the balls for 10 minutes, and to say that they were cleanliness through the heat of the sun down in Florida.
That makes no sense.
I mean, Garfield High School, we had enough money to buy 3 balls. We didn't have 90 balls. We had 3 balls. And so we would have been wiping them on every down. So again, it's that whole bigger picture. Do we have the resources to help these guys, these coaches, and the kids to make sure we're safe? And, if we're being honest, I mean, the coaches, most of them aren't real young anymore. I mean, most of them are older people. And could they create those such scenarios and bring it home to their wives and maybe their parents? And, we all know how this thing works. So I do hope that they do monitor it closely, and that are some adults in the room that are really watching it and making sure that we're doing the right thing and we don't have any issues. I'd love to see it go just perfect for 4 or 5 months, and everything goes great. Nobody gets injured and the kids get to play. I hope that's what happens.
Two things. We're going to wrap it up. The reality is that unless you're in a district or with a certain school that can provide fundings for 90 footballs, the reality is that most of this stuff is going to come out of coach's pocket, right? They get paid a stipend already as it is. And we're talking about the high school level, the local public high school level, where there's not enough funding for teachers and everything else. They're only going to throw but so much money. I don't know how many programs I've come across over years where, that you have kids from last year leave their cleats. So when kids come in, if they can't afford to have any cleats, they're looking for their sizes and reutilizing cleats, let alone you're talking about Clorox and wipes and everything else, and who's cleaning what. I mean, I don't know how many locker rooms you've been in, but I've been in plenty where I'm like, this place hasn't been clean in about 6 years. So anything that's going to maintain a health standard is going to fall pretty much on the shoulders of coaches, not custodians or anything else. It's going to fall on coaches if they want to maintain a certain level. So we're really putting that responsibility at the high school level, at the public school level, especially on coaches to find a way after their day, after practice, after everybody's gone home, after everybody's thrown all their dirty crap in their locker and everything else, to wipe and clean down and benches. And to what extent are you doing that? We've been in locker rooms where there's no ventilation and you're supposed to sit there and look at film and everything else. It's a daunting task when you get past the fact of, oh, just let them play. If you get past the fact of, oh, just let them play and everything that coincides with that, it is a really daunting task. And we just hope that it all gets worked out.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Amen to that. Amen to that.
Last thing, and you mentioned it, and I just kind of want to reiterate. Are you concerned, just because you've been a coach and you see how the timeline works in a calendar year, are you concerned about injuries? Maybe if they get through this season with football, basketball, whatever case may be that they're doing, but going in and turning it around quickly and being ready to get to a summer practice and get ready for fall football from high school to college, especially that transition. Are you concerned that there's going to be an uptick in injuries?
Absolutely. I mean, I made a commitment to myself to start walking about 3 or 4 months ago, just because I wanted to make sure I was doing something. Well, think about these kids haven't played any sports, mostly on the West Coast, for basically a year. Some of the basketball AU guys have gone out of the state and done some different things, but for the most part, so, even for myself, it takes a little time to, get the legs working right, you make things, and as you get old and all these things. So if you can imagine a kid has not played their sport for everything, and then turn them around and put them in a 4-month stretch where they're going to play 3 different sports, and then turn around and jump right into the summer to get ready to go off to play their fall sport for their college. Yeah, the injury level could be high. I think that, I know you do a program with the orthopedic surgeon. I'm sure that he could probably address it even better than I could ever. But as a coach, without a doubt, I think the stress level on these kids, literally the stress on bones and bodies is going to be immense. And let alone trying to get them through the season, trying to do the right things. When we talk about a high school team, you and I, we present this picture. Well, it's just not the football program. There's the cross country coach. There's the golf coach. There's the different sports. So you're talking about 20, 3 or 4 teams in that locker that are going in and out that door. And as every coach doing the same thing. So again, it's a bigger picture to the whole thing. But again, what your question is, that's a real concern. I mean, I think it showed its head. I think if we probably did a study of it, you and I could probably show a lot of injuries in the NFL the first 2 weeks of this year, just because I don't think the guys trained as did, and I think happened in college. I saw guys like literally no non-contact injury, just running and just buckle, and their knee goes out on them. So I'm very, very concerned, because number one, they've had such a long layoff, and then we're going to push them into this short little playoff, and then they're going to have to go out and turn around and get ready to do the thing. And as we both know, I mean, if you're getting bigger, faster, stronger, you're putting more things onto your body, your stress levels and all the things, your knees and joints and things like that. It's hard for these kids. And if you're not trained right, if you're not doing it right, you're not doing it properly, it's good. Parents need to, sometimes say, okay, it's okay to back off a little bit. Let's back you off, because I think you're stressed, you're doing all those things. So parents need to be very, very aware of that whole thing. So yeah, I'd be highly concerned about the injuries.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with the stress level that you just mentioned. That we're in a difficult time right now where stress level is at all-time high. We don't talk enough about our mental aspect and how that's being challenged throughout this difficult time, let alone having pressure. Maybe not so much for athletes that we know already have a kind of a gig in place at the next level, but for kids, they're saying, if I don't play this year, I might not get looked at. And that is difficult. And that's something that, I'm pretty sure that you see, in your field, but that's got to be daunting to parents and to the student athletes that pretty much have lost at the high school level, not so much the college level, because they're saying you could come back and play, but the high school level, you're moving along. There's not another year of eligibility. If you're a senior, you're a senior. If you're a junior, you're going to be a senior next year. So you're losing something, and that might cause you to kind of go out there, really kind of put yourself out there. So it'd be concerning. And on a lighter note, I have no idea how the Seattle Parks Department is going to figure out fields. So shout out to whoever's running the field department. I've dealt with them before, trying to get games and logistics and setting up fields when I was doing lacrosse. And it is not easy. And I can't even imagine with everybody playing. I'm pretty sure if you call him, that they won't be picking up their phone. I don't want to hear about your field. Go figure it out. Go back to the way we did it in the 80s. We're going to play football sewer to sewer. That's the touchdowns. If you run into a car, you're out of bounds. You better, you figure it out. You go out there, you figure it out, but don't call me for fields, because he's going to have every program calling him saying, "Hey, I need a field on Friday night."
Well, I happen to sit on a Seattle Sports Advisory Council for Seattle Parks and Recreation, and so I know this firsthand. And I know, and all I do is I think of the scenes like Braveheart when cheering them, and people have no clue when that door finally opens and everybody can go to the field and start. It is going to be out of control.
Yeah,
I mean, we thought we had frustrations already. We're going to have coaches with fisticuffs. It will be ugly. I had the field from 5 to 6. You had no.
And now we're not even talking about club sports.
Yeah.
The Seattle Celtics and United and this one and that one they have there. We got into a fight one time with a coach over the field. Who was supposed to have it? Exactly what you're alluding to. We had it from 3:30 to 5. Blah, blah, blah. So we made sure that every single coach had laminated the permits, so we would never, ever get into that fight again. So if you're on the board, make sure you tell, hey, whoever has a field, whoever's a permit, you must have that on you at all times in order to avoid all that. So that was something that we made sure that all of our coaches, assistant coaches, and captains, that sometimes they would run captains practice, everyone would have that, and we would have it a place where you could either show it online, but we also had it laminated for them to make sure that they carried that permit. It was almost like you got to grab your keys, your wallet, and your field permit, because you have to avoid the possible chaos. So that's my 2 cents to you guys.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's going to be just the wild, wild west for that whole situation. So hopefully, and I want to end this whole thing from me personally, kind of talk about, you were talking about the mental health, and at the end of the day, it's for the kids. In Las Vegas, there's a small school district where they're trying to get themselves back into playing, doing sports, and getting these kids. They've had 18 suicides since March of last year to this year. And so the mental health, working with these kids, coaches, parents, really recognize your kids and what they're going through. Yeah, I know you're going through it too, but your kids are really going through some tough times, not seeing their friends, not spending the time doing the things. And if you need help, get help, do what you need to do. And I hope that these kids can safely get back on the field, that they can do it right, and that they get, the mental things that they need to be able to get past this whole thing. That was really a shocking number for me personally.
Scott Laigo, president of Student Athletes Advocate. He is here to help you, the student athlete and the parents, to navigate the recruiting process, the eligibility process. And if there's ever a time that you're going to need help with this mess, please reach out to Scott Laigo. He's on Twitter and he has his website. So Student Athletes Advocate. Please check him out. He is here to help you, and he's here to help me get through this show. Scott, thanks. I appreciate your time. And for anyone that's not watching us on YouTube, check us out on Spotify, Apple, iHeart. It's NYSEA Radio. We appreciate your time. Scott, thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.